I thought I'll take you to a very strange time of the week. It's strange not just for me, but for you as well. It's Sunday evening. It's the time when we suffer from a syndrome that I call Sunday sunset syndrome. You know, the funny thing is that even the way I receive a phone call on a Friday evening, which is like, "Hi, let's go out," becomes so different to how I receive a phone call on a Sunday evening, which is like, "Hello, I'm just not in a mood." So clearly, I need a pick-me-up. My daughter and I decide to watch a movie on one such Sunday evening. The first movie that we thought we could watch is Steve Jobs' incredible story. I've watched it a million times, and I can possibly watch a million times again. I love it that much. The second one, though, is called Hidden Figures. I know nothing about this story. They say it's a true story, but the fact that the title of the movie has the word hidden in it makes me feel that the chances of something exposed and revealed, the things you worry about when you watch a movie with a child, is very little. So I make that a choice to watch with my little one. 2 hours, 7 minutes later, the movie finishes. My daughter has one question, and I have several in my head. My daughter's question, is this a true story? My question, how come I know nothing about these women? I mean, they were responsible for putting America's greatest astronaut, John Glenn, in orbit, and I know nothing about them. Why? My curiosity piqued, and I needed to find out. And what I found led to my assertion for today. If women told their stories, they won't be hidden figures. So, looks like the task and the ask is super simple. Start telling your stories and be known for what you're worth. You wish. But if I was to pick any of the women here today and ask her, "Tell me your story," her response is going to be, "Mine? I don't have a story to tell you. Maybe I'll tell you John, Matthew, Glenn, somebody else's." So why is it that we find it so hard to tell our story? To be able to answer that question, I have to tell you a story. So let's go back to September 2015. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. My alarm rings. And I have made a typical motherhood choice of leaving the same morning to give a keynote in Kuala Lumpur. And I'm anxious, not because of the keynote, but I'm just hoping that everything that I have planned for my daughter falls exactly how I want for it to be. 2 hours later, I'm in KL, all's going per plan, until I see the long immigration queues. And now the only question I have in my head is, am I going to make it? I get to the venue just in time. And as I get there, I can see the stage manager waiting for me. He takes one look at me up and down and says to me, "Ma'am, I have a problem. You're wearing a dress. Where am I going to hook a mic?" Well, I have sorted that problem out several times. I know how to do that, as you can see. I take 2 steps towards the stage, and I can see there's a hand on my back. And I'm like, it's the stage manager again. This time, the ask is, "Can you remove those earrings? They interfere with the audio." Well, you can see I haven't learned. I still hold my love for earrings. But at that time, I had no choice. I remove the earrings and I get up on the stage. And finally, I'm giving the keynote that I had to. But it doesn't end. 2 minutes into the keynote, cluck, oops, what's that? I can feel like I'm taller on one side than the other. My heel's broken. And at this moment, I just want to hide. Of course, rest of the talk that day was given barefoot, and I had to bear the vulnerability of the entire audience knowing how vertically challenged I am. I may not give you that privilege today. I'm well prepared, as you can see. Weeks later, in an informal catch-up with the client, I tell her what an idiot I had been about not being able to hold myself together. And as I'm telling her what had happened, my client says, "No, you're not whinging, ranting, or being an idiot. You should, in fact, tell that story." And I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "What are the chances the earring, the broken heel, leaving the same morning can happen to a man?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's true." there is a chance for connection. So I reluctantly agreed, but very bravely in a few weeks, stand up in a conference just like I'm standing in front of all of you, and I give it a go. The morning tea happens, and I'm outside, and everybody's coming and talking to me about my broken heel. But I thought people should be talking to me about the various titles I've held: general manager, director of business development, head of client relations. What happened to that? And what happened to my global experience of having worked in India, Singapore, and Australia? My story stood on a broken heel, really? I had an aha. I thought maybe in my vulnerability is my strength. But you know, I can't just live with maybe. I needed to make sure I got myself to a place where I can say I'm dead sure my vulnerability is my strength. And if I start becoming comfortable with my vulnerability, I will create connections. And I looked further. So when I looked further, I found out that Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, her very famous TED Talk, "Why Do We Have Too Few Women Leaders?" success was built on a similar story. So a lot of us know about the talk, but a lot of us don't know that on the morning of the conference, when she arrived at the venue, Sheryl Sandberg told her friend, "It's been a bad start to the day. You know, my daughter was clinging onto my legs and she didn't want me to go." Her friend recommended that she should tell that story in the conference. Initially, Sandberg's reaction was, "Are you kidding me? I'm going to get up and tell a story of my daughter clinging onto my leg?" But she made that brave decision, and thank God she made that brave decision that day. That talk single-handedly was responsible for sparking a movement. Many lean-in groups and corporate partnerships were set up because of that talk. Now, I had started to feel that in moments when I want to hide, telling a story makes me rise. In moments when Sheryl Sandberg wanted to hide, telling a story makes her rise. I have cracked the code, and this is the advice I'm going to give my daughter. You know, Maya, start telling stories of your vulnerability, and the connections will happen, and we will no longer be hidden figures. But then something happened. I went into a boardroom, which is more like where we live, you know, rather than on stages. And this image popped up in my head. And I thought to myself, clearly the animal is not trying to create a connection with this girl, and a boardroom is more like this. So before I teach my little one to tell stories of vulnerability, I'm going to teach her to tell stories of strength. So what does a mother do when she wants to teach something? She digs her own experiences. I also digged my experience. And I went back to the time when I was just a sales manager working in Australia. It was this day when I had to do sales strategy presentation. I walked into the room, and there were all these people sitting, and I had to do the presentation. At the back of the room, there were these two women sitting, and they were laughing and giggling. I instantly told myself a story that they're laughing at me. You know that thing that happens to us women? I'm not sharp enough, I'm not clever enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not slim enough, and if it just doesn't stop, right? That thing happened to me, and I froze. I fell short of words, and I wanted to hide. I walked up to my boss, and I said to her, "You know what? I'm not right for this role." The grapevine was that as well, that maybe I had been promoted way too early. My boss gave me one-line response that day. She said, "Anjali, you've been in a role for 5 months. You've done some credible work in the time that you've been here. How is it that one story and one failure is defining you?" I reflected upon that conversation. 2 weeks later, I stood for a take 2 of sales strategy presentation. And this time my presentation started like this. What happened 2 weeks ago made not only you all, but me think also that maybe I'm not right for this role. And I was totally convinced. I went up to Victoria, our boss, and I told her that she should get one of you to do this presentation. And she said to me that in the last 5 months that you've been here, you've done some credible work. How is it that one moment is defining you? With that confidence rebuilt again, today I want to share with you what I am really passionate about: sales strategy. Well, I did that then, what I didn't know what kind of wisdom was in that moment. Now when I look back, I think there are 2 lessons in there that I want to give my daughter and to anybody else who's here to learn from that. The very first one, in a boardroom where you're not telling stories of vulnerability and I want you to tell stories of strength, There is no harm in borrowing others' voices. There is nothing wrong with saying, I have been often told, my colleagues tell me, the feedback I've been given just like I did. I said, Victoria, our boss said to me, she reminded me, borrow others' voices. The second one, I said to people that I stand for, my story stands for passion for sales strategy. And when you walk into a boardroom environment, I often visualize this, that your forehead is like this. It's a blank whiteboard. If you don't tell people what you stand for, then most likely they will write something like this on it. I will never forget, in my earlier days, one of my bosses who had just taken over our department, she walked in the very first day. We all knew she's the new director of marketing. We all knew what her role was. But the way she introduced herself that day was like this. My name is Sonia Lefebvre. I'm looking forward to taking you all forward. And I'm known for all things strategy. If Microsoft can say I stand for productivity, if Apple can say I stand for think different, I don't know why can't we say what we stand for. And come on, everyone. In today's day and age, where even a yogurt is sold because of a story, where even clothes are sold because of a story, and hold on for this, even a soap is sold because of a story, I wonder why we are not telling ours. I want to go back to these amazing, amazing three women. And why was their story not told? A lot of people say that the reason why their story was not told was because at the time that they worked, there was a lot of ism to be fought. Sexism, racism, and that's really where the search stops. But the truth is this, if you were to ask any one of their children, Mom, when that amazing thing was happening at NASA and you were working towards putting John Glenn into orbit, what were you doing? And they say, no, John is an amazing astronaut. NASA was doing great. I wasn't doing anything amazing. I was just doing my normal work. They forgot the me. So next time when you're told job well done on a project, it's okay to say the boss was fabulous. It was okay to say I got lucky. And it's also okay to say that the team was very supportive. But it's not okay to forget the me. You can perhaps say the management was supportive, the team was great, which enabled me to drive the desired outcome. Finally, I just want to say this. I don't think I ever answered my daughter's question that whether Hidden Figures was a true story. She's somewhere here in the audience today, and I want her to know it is a true story in front of all of you. But what I want her to know more importantly is because today we are rewriting the rules, it will not take 57 long years for another great woman's story to be told. So ladies and gentlemen, if we women told our stories, we won't be hidden figures.